Johannes Kepler was definitely again another very curious kind of a person. He was born in Germany, December 27, 2 days after Christmas, at 1 p.m. Okay, and remarkable amount of information is available for him. Like, say, for example, um, it is known that Kepler was in his mother's womb for 224 days, 9 hours, and 53 minutes. How come this kind of information is available to us? Any guesses?
He was like his parents were like famous or some important people.
So yeah, okay. So because they were very famous people, people just knew about it because a lot of information was available about famous people. Well, the fact is that Johannes Kepler was born to an extremely poor family. In fact, they were so poor that sometimes they had about a dozen children in the house, cousins and relatives and so on.
Sure.
There were days in which there would not be even enough food for everybody. So Johannes Kepler was born in a very, very poor household. Yeah, somebody wanted to say something. Yes.
So what is this? Yeah, sir. What have you written the dates and I didn't get that. Why have you written it? I didn't actually pay attention that day.
Okay, good. So this 224 days, 9 hours and 53 minutes is the time that Johannes Kepler spent in his mother's womb before being born on 1 p.m. on December 27, 1571. So my question is just simply that how come we know this kind of...
Wow, that's like...
Sorry?
224 days. That's like too long.
Is it?
No, that's not what I mean.
That's like less.
It might be a little less than the actual...
Around 9 months only, it's not long.
Sir,
Okay,
sir,
we'll cut to the chase.
sir,
Sir, how is it possible? We know we know how many days he spent and hours and minutes, but we don't know much. We don't know Copernicus's own mother.
No, this kind of information is rarely available for any individual. The only reason, I'll tell it myself because
Sir?
in the interest of time, I want to move forward. Yeah, last comment, please. Yes.
sir, Ananya is in the waiting room.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Chananya?
Sir.
There are 4 people.
The J something.
Okay. So,
Okay.
the reason is that Johannes Kepler himself. Kepler actually kind of maintained a diary of all the events that happened in his lifetime. So there's very, very detailed, records of every major event that happened. And of course, Kepler as a baby would not have noted this down, but naturally he did his calculations after he was born, after he grew up probably. And based on his calculations, he had written these exact dates. So it gives you, the reason why I'm sharing this is that it gives you the kind of person Kepler was, the kind of person who is very detailed in his observations.
Is he paranoid?
I don't think so. There is no mention of Kepler. Yeah, that's also a possibility that there are people who are paranoid who do things like that. But I think it was just out of a wanting of keeping information in as much detail as it is possible, just out of his own interest, for no practical purpose, but out of his own interest. But the fact remains that Johannes Kepler was born to a very poor household in Germany, and he was actually a baby, as a young child and a baby. He was quite sickly, in the sense that there were a couple of occasions where he almost died out of sickness, and his family was also so poor that they could not take much care of him. In fact, he hardly knew his father, as I mentioned earlier. His father was a kind of a mercenary, so he would be away fighting wars in distant places, and when he comes back, he used to be at home only for a few weeks or months, and then he would again have to return somewhere. So he was more or less brought up by his mother and his maternal grandfather. Okay, so he was the person. He was a small farmer, and he used to his work as in terms of agriculture used to support the entire family. But luckily for Johannes Kepler, he showed some interest in academics. So he used to go to a local school for a few hours on a day. And his teacher noted that Johannes Kepler showed some brilliance in terms of his ability at grammar, arithmetic, and so on, at writing, reading, which he picked up fairly early. And the teacher then, out of his own effort, decided to send Kepler to what is known as a seminary. Do you know what is a seminary?
So,
sir.
Yeah.
uh, for some reason, I'm not able to pin your video.
I have spotlighted the video, so if you go to the reader view, then you sorry, speaker view, then
Go to the speaker view. It might have already been pinned.
it has already been pinned. That's why.
I can see it.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, it's saying that your network bandwidth is low.
Not saying that for me, so maybe your network bandwidth is low.
No, sir. Sir, it's saying that Arun.
No, sir, it's showing written that Arun Kumar's network bandwidth is low.
Yeah, I'm just sorry, I can't do anything about that right now. So, in case there is a loss, just hold
Yes,
on.
you can see the thing he's writing. No,
Yeah, as long as you can see what I'm writing and
it doesn't matter.
What is the seminary?
yeah, so a seminary is a school that you are sent for religious studies. Okay, so it's like a school where you are taught other subjects also, but mainly it is a religious school, and you go to a seminary to learn about Christianity mainly. Okay, so it's a practice that is still there, in which if your family had many children and it's difficult for your family to maintain all the children because you're poor, then you could send one or two children to this religious school. So basically what you are doing is you are giving the
Sir,
time for religion. Yeah.
so there most of the textbooks is like Bible and Bible related, all to chemistry.
So it is a Bible school. You go to study the Bible.
Oh.
But it also teaches you other subjects. So seminaries can vary. So some seminaries also teach mathematics, astronomy, Greek, Latin, philosophy, etc., etc. So luckily, Johannes Kepler happened to go to one such seminary where his teacher, a man known as Mestelin, okay, who becomes his academic mentor. So Mestelin takes a deep interest
Sir,
in
what is his spelling?
MAE. It's just the E that is not clear. TERLIN.
Stirling.
Yeah, Mestelin. So Mestelin,
He was under him.
yeah, he was being taught by him. Okay, and Mestelin recognizes that Johannes Kepler has some talent, and of course takes a personal interest in Johannes Kepler, and sends Johannes Kepler to study in a university, which was a rare thing for people coming from ordinary backgrounds. Okay, so Johannes Kepler gets sent to university to study religion, and along with religion, he also studies other subjects. So he goes to University of Tübingen. Okay.
So what is it? Tübingen. Can you say the spelling?
Tübingen.
Oh, that's German accent, man.
Yeah, with that German accent. Two. I'm not sure.
So he studied after his school. He studied at University of Tübingen.
Yeah, Tübingen. Yes.
So like they're in the football players Ozil.
Sorry, yeah, oh, yeah, it's like an O. Tube. U.
No, sir. I think Shiv said the player Ozil.
Sorry?
Or the German football player Ozil. He has the same mark.
Ah, okay. The German player who has the same letter in his name, alphabet in his name. Okay. So,
I had a question.
yeah,
So he first went to the seminary and then after that to the universe or the.
yeah, that's the way, yes. From the seminary to the university. Seminary is like a school. So after completing school, you go to university. University is the highest
So,
education that you can receive, even today. Yeah.
so how long did he study in the seminary?
I am not sure, the dates are not available to me, but typically the amount of time that you would spend at school, something like about a decade, depending upon at what age you came in. But in those days, in those
Sir,
in those days, let me finish this point. In those days, it was not like there is a specific age. Like now we say that when you're 17 or 18, you enter university, and then your graduation happens in 3 years. Your post graduation happens in another 2 years or 3 years, etc., etc. But in those days, you could go to university at whatever age you wanted to, as long as it's not too advanced. That's all. Yes. Next question.
sir,
Yeah.
Didn't he maintain a very detailed journal?
Yes, he did. Right
Then
through his
how-
life. Oh,
why
but
do we
journal
have
is not available to me.
sir,
Yeah.
it's pronounced as Tübingen, something like that.
Tube.
Like I just saw the Tübingen
Yeah.
or something like that.
Tube engine. Yes, you're right. Okay, so shall I continue now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when he completes his university education, he gets a job as a mathematicus, that means as a mathematical teacher, in a newly opened college in rural Germany called Graz. Okay, so there is a new college that has opened up in a small province, in a small place. You can imagine something like Rajguru Nagar or something like that. So he goes to work as a mathematics teacher at Graz. Okay, and at Graz as a mathematics teacher is where the story, the connection of Johannes Kepler's story with the story of astronomy begins. So is the timeline kind of clear till now? Not the timeline, but mostly the event line, because I haven't given the dates for everything. So it's the.
Sir, how did he afford to go to the college, to the university and everything?
It was sponsored by this thing.
Astelin.
Scholarship.
Yeah. It was because he was part of the seminary that he got into university. Just a second, the door keeps banging. I'll just latch it and come.
Sir,
Yeah.
are there seminary colleges?
Has the seminary?
Seminary colleges.
Seminary.
Like they only teach Christianity in the college or something like that.
These are like schools.
No.
No, like if you want to become a priest or something in the church,
Exactly.
what do you study?
Yeah, so he was trained to be a priest, but it's not necessary that everybody who goes through seminary becomes a priest. In the end, it depends on what you want to do. So in the case of Kepler, since he was showing some promise in terms of academic work, Mestelin recommended that he goes to university. And you see, the universities at that time also, they were not private universities. They were mostly universities that were owned by the church or by the kingdom. So therefore, if it is owned by the church, then Mestelin being one of the church officials, he can recommend he can recommend a student to study in that university. And I do not know, maybe he paid a small fees, maybe his fees was waived off, maybe he studied for free. I'm not sure about those things, but chances are that he did not pay a lot for his education. So he got a subsidized education, probably because he was a brilliant student. Is that fine? This I am guessing.
The
Of.
Something like a
scholarship.
scholarship.
Like a scholarship. Yeah. I am guessing this, of course. I'm not entirely sure. It seems to see Meisterlin actually plays a major role in Johannes Kepler's life throughout. So a lot of things that happened to Kepler happened as a result of Meisterlin's intervention, and it is quite possible that Johannes Kepler took Meisterlin's advice on many things, and that's how he landed up in the University of Tübingen. But having become a mathematics teacher at Graz was a problem. See, the reason why Kepler agreed to teach mathematics was more out of desperation rather than out of choice. He was actually not very good at maths, and he would have rather liked to teach astronomy. But it so happened that the people who opened the college in Graz, they were more interested in teaching mathematics for the rural students at Graz. So the only post that was available was the post of a mathematics teacher, what at that time was known as a mathematicus.
So what's the spelling of Meisterlin or whatever, the advisor guy?
Kailash,
It's written there.
Kailash, can you keep the mic away from your mouth?
It's unclear, the spelling. Is the voice better?
Yeah,
Yes,
much
thanks.
better. Okay, Meisterlin. Since you're so interested in Meisterlin. Okay, so since Kepler took up a position to teach mathematics, he offered a course in basic mathematics. Okay, Ashi, is it too loud what I'm saying? No, okay. So he offered a course in mathematics, which was a complete disaster, because in the first year, and the records exist of this, in the first year there were only some 3 or 4 students who took up this course in mathematics. Okay, and in the second year that he taught this course, there were only 2 students. So it seems that he was very, very poor as a mathematics teacher, and he probably knew it very much himself, because that was not his area of expertise or his area of interest. Okay, and it seems that he was a fairly boring mathematics teacher, and a not successful one at that. But while he was teaching mathematics, his thoughts remained on astronomy, and as he was teaching a fundamental course in geometry, Johannes Kepler seems to have had his first breakthrough. Okay, so he was teaching his students about the Platonic solids. Do you people know what the Platonic solids are? I'm going to erase part of this. I hope that's all right. So the Platonic solids are basically...
It's something related to shapes, right?
It's something related to shapes, yes. Do you know anything more about it? So, I mean, you can of course just Google Platonic solids.
Is it like related to geography?
Platonic, like
Something like plate.
round solids.
Yeah,
No, it's all kinds of different shapes, I think.
Ah, Kailash, please.
I'm not even wearing the headphone now.
Oh my god.
Nani, can you please stop that?
what happened?
These shapes or something.
My eardrums are bursting here.
I'll show you this Platonic solids, okay? Just a moment.
Decrease the volume.
Yeah, you can also decrease your volume, but please
It's at its slowest.
keep the a little bit away from you yourself. I'm just sharing the screen, showing you the Platonic solids. Okay, so can you see the shared screen now? So basically, what the Platonic solids are is that you can use the shapes that are given at the bottom, right? And you can make them fit one to another, and there are only these triangles, the pentagon and the square, which can make a closed shape. So the different shapes that are possible are the tetrahedron, octahedron, icosahedron, dodecahedron, and the middle one, which is the cuboid. Okay, this is fairly well known in geometry. If you want, you can look up Platonic solids and figure that out. It's basically a kind of a consequence of plane geometry. Okay.
Sir, is this tessellation in solids?
It's not tessellation. Tessellation is in 2 dimensions. This is tessellations in 3 dimensions, but closed figures. So they close completely. They form an enclosed shape.
Why does it say fire, air, earth, water, and
Because there was a connection between
Ether.
elements. Ether was that quintessence. So they equated, the Greek philosophers equated these two things. But that's not what we are interested in. Basically, in geometry, we know about these closed shapes that can be formed by regular shaped objects. Okay, like a triangle, a square, and a pentagon, a regular pentagon. These are the only shapes that are known to exist which forms closed solids. Okay. Now, what has this got to do with it? So this is something that has been taught in geometry for thousands of years. Now, while Kepler was teaching Platonic solids, he suddenly had an idea, because the big question in astronomy at that time was, if the planets are arranged in the solar system with the sun at the center or the earth at the center, however the case may be, it wasn't still clear at that point of time, then at what distances are the other planets located from one another? So this was the question that was there. Okay, and the prevailing idea at that time was that the distances of the planets from one another must be in some ratio which is governed by geometry. Okay. Now, where did this come from? It's an entirely different question in the history of science. But this is what people believe. So it was kind of like, to think about it, was kind of foolish to think that something in geometry would give the ratio at which the planetary orbits were organized. But that is how people thought at that time, and that was the pursuit of all astronomers at that time, to find out in what ratios these were there. And Kepler thought that he had a big breakthrough when he realized that the ratios in which the Platonic solids were arranged, right, would be the ratio at which the planets would also be arranged. For after all, the Platonic solids were something that was given by God, and therefore God must have used the same ratios to also organize the planets. Okay, just an idea to think about, but this set off Kepler on a wild goose chase, as it were. Okay, so now any questions about this?
His question was like, how far are the planets from each other?
Correct.
Or what was the question?
The question was that, yes. So if you had the sun and you had the orbits of the various planets around it, the question that astronomers were asking at that time was, what is the ratio between this and this? The distance between the inner planet and the outer planet. And therefore the ratios for all the planets, the radius, the ratios of the radius. Okay. So everybody was trying to figure out some way.
Sir, but what has that got?
Yeah, exactly. I'll come to that. What has that got to do with Platonic solids, right?
So he thought that God must have made the planets ka ratio also like the platonic solids, you said.
Exactly. But in what way? That is the question. Okay. And actually, if you Google Kepler, you will see a very peculiar shaped object. I will show you that object now. Do you see this? Can you see the picture that I am showing to you? A black and white picture?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, are you able to see something? Are the platonic solids there?
Sir,
Yeah. I can see
the
the
platonic solids in the middle.
Yes, the platonic solids in the middle. Which is the largest platonic solid?
The
The cube.
Cuboid.
What is there inside the cube?
Sorry.
Cuboid, yes.
That is triangle.
Prism.
Tetrahedron.
Pyramid. Prism. Pyramid.
Prism.
Prism.
The pyramid. But
Oh,
what
the
is
cuboid.
the cuboid is the largest. Forget about the spheres. Okay, the spheres represent the size of the orbit. Okay, so what is inside the sphere is what gives the ratio. So what his brainwave was that if all the platonic solids could be fitted into one another, okay, then the ratio of the sizes of the platonic solids by which they fitted into one another gave the ratio of the orbits. Okay. Today's date.
Sounds like a crazy idea.
Yeah, it is a completely crazy idea. The fact was. Okay. And in today's date, we know that that's not the fact. But in those days, we can forgive people for having thought that it is something like that. And but Kepler, of course, went one step further. So what Kepler proposed to the regent, to the king at that time, was that he had figured out a way in which the planetary ratios, the orbital ratios were made, because he had done the maths. Okay, he had just done the maths on paper, and he said that I've got it. And he said that it's like this. He explained the mathematics, and then he told the king that I want to make a model of this. Okay, and a large sized model, and that model would then be presented as proof of the fact that the ratios of the orbits of different planets was bound to the idea of platonic solids fitting within each other, and therefore Kepler had proven what was then the biggest mystery in terms of astronomy at that time. And why would the king support this? Well, because the kings were the patrons of the arts and sciences at that time, and there was some pride associated for them in being part of great scientific discoveries. Okay, so Kepler started making this model, and obviously while making the model, he discovered that the task was a fairly complex one in terms of a practical application, and although he tried for several years, he never really succeeded in making the model. So it was a big flop in terms of an breakthrough. Okay, but what seems to have happened is that it seems to have pushed Kepler a little deeper into study of astronomy. Okay, which might not have happened had he become more successful as a mathematics teacher. Okay, and had he not also pursued this interest in astronomy further, even though it was in this case a wild goose chase. Okay, so this is the most famous mistake that Kepler did. So how did Kepler get from making arguably one of 17th century's greatest mistakes, because an enormous amount of money was spent by the king, I think it was Rudolf II, who gave money to him to do this. Okay, and in fact he was not satisfied with simple metals like iron. He wanted gold and silver to make these things. Okay,
he wasted so much. That's why we don't have gold now.
Sir, on the
okay, but from here to being the most revolutionary astronomer ever, so much so that his centenary was celebrated across the world. The birth centenary, I think the 200th birth centenary it would have been, or the 300th birth centenary, in fact, in 1971, was celebrated across the world. Okay, states as far away as Jumeirah to Ecuador to Russia, Germany, all these states published his name, published a stamp in his honor. Okay, so how did Kepler get from here to there? From his greatest failure in life to the greatest success in terms of astronomy in history. So that forms the rest of the story. Now, I think we may have to stop here. But yes, if there are any questions, I can take it up now.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
So on your whiteboard, you've drawn this diagram.
Yeah.
So in the center, did he, when he was asking the question, did he consider the sun in the center or the earth in the center?
No, sorry, I wrote sun by mistake, but I said earlier that sun or the earth or whatever it was. What was not in dispute was that the planets went around the central object and they had circular paths. So the ratio of the radii of these circular paths was what was being asked. So at that time, I think Kepler was aware, he was aware of the heliocentric model given by Copernicus, and Kepler actually also believed in the heliocentric model. He had read the book Cosmographicum, and he was in correspondence. He had perhaps a little later also corresponded or written to Galileo about his ideas, and therefore he got into a lot of trouble because of that. Kepler himself got into trouble. So he might well have thought the sun was at the center. I'm not very sure about this, but it is possible now that I come to think of it. Any other questions?
Yeah, sir. Shiv here. I have a question.
Yeah.
So, like, rectangles like also can make platonic solids. So, like, why isn't those mentioned?
Bye, sir.
I said, just a moment. Wait a little bit. 2:55. 3 more minutes are there. Listen to some general questions at least. I did not ask people to leave. 2:55 onwards, you can leave. I will tell you when. No. So the idea of the platonic solids is that regular shapes. So that means you can, the sides have to be equal. So if you look at all of these things, they are equilateral triangles, they are regular pentagons, and a regular rectangle, if you like to call it that, but it has a special name, it's called a square.
Yeah.
So their dimensions are same in every direction. That's what it means. From vertex to vertex.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So in the next class, with apologies to Kailash, I will take up the story of Tycho de Brahe, tie up these two stories and finish the whole account.
Sir,
Yeah.
so in the model which he made where he failed, would it have been the same if he put the pyramid first and then the cuboid inside it, and then, like, for example, it was a different order? What would be what would happen if it was in a different order?
Yeah, I think by doing the mathematics of it, he found, because 5 different shapes have to be fitted within one another. So I think he figured out that the only way it can be done in this is in this order, or it could be in terms of increasing complexity. But of course, it does not look like that to me. The cube, then the pyramid, and then I think I see the icosahedron, the pentagon, the closed pentagon.
Yeah.
So
Inside the small sphere.
Tetrahedron is not there, so I think he put the tetrahedron inside the icosahedron.
Sir, on the orbit, so
in this picture, the spheres that hold everything. So, do they have the
Orbits.
Greek symbols for the planets?
Yeah.
Okay.
See that Saturn is there in the outside most.
Yeah.
So how big was this thing? Like, actually, how big was it?
Actually, in originality, I don't know the dimensions. In originality, he failed to make this. What I just noticed a little while before the beginning of the class, I was just looking it up, and I found that we have done 3D printed models of this. So 3D printed models that can fit inside a human hand. So with today's engineering technology, it is actually possible for us to make this. So it was not as if his theory failed in terms of the question that was raised because of anything mathematical. His theory failed simply because there was the engineering required to do this was not possible at that time. That's all. Whereas today the models are available. You can make the fitting, what is it, the platonic solids fitting to show the orbits. It can be.
But I found the image. I found an image on.
Yeah. It's interesting. I wish you.
Sir, I have one last question.
Yeah, last question, yes.
Sir, so then in the picture given,
Yeah.
there is a cube, and then after that there is a bowl. In that the other shapes are there. Why is the extra bowl there?
Each bowl is actually the orbit of the planet. Okay, so the outermost bowl, you can see the symbol over here. There's a symbol of Saturn. The next one is the symbol of what is the other planet? Jupiter, and so on. So the bowl actually represents the orbit of the planet.
So,
okay.
But the bowl has some thickness, right? So it's not accurate.
Yeah.
The actual orbit will be just an imaginary line.
Imaginary line. It's an imaginary sphere. But you can't make an imaginary sphere. Since he was making it in metals, he had to show it with some depth. Okay, so now just a moment before everybody goes, I'll just 1 second.